Perone. I'm the chairman of the NPC Newsmakers Committee. And this morning, we're going to talk about autism and new methods of intervention for helping kids on the autism spectrum. Our primary speaker this morning is Dr. Pamela Robbins. She's going to talk about the results of her current research on humanoid robots and how they will change the way that educators and therapists and parents work with children on the autism spectrum. Also speaking will be Fred Margolin, who is the CEO and founder of Robokind, and Brad Baird, who is the COO of Robokind, who are the makers of this guy here, Milo. Milo was created essentially by Dr. Robbins. They're going to do a demonstration a little later in the presentation. And Milo was developed solely for autism intervention, designed to teach students on that spectrum social cues and engage them in learning and educational games. Just a little bit about Dr. Rollins. She received her doctorate from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She's the recipient of the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Foundation's first Investigators Award. And she was twice named the Collier Scholar at the Collier Center for Communication Disorders at the University of Texas at Dallas. She has been appointed 4 times by governors of the state of Texas to the Texas Council for Autism and Pervasive Development Disorders. Before we start the presentation, just a couple of quick ground rules. When our speakers have finished their presentation, we will open the floor to questions. Priority in questions goes to credentialed media and to members of the press club. If time allows, we can open it up further. So when you are called on to pose a question, please state your name and your affiliation. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you, Brad.
Thanks, Herb. Thanks for the introduction. Good morning. Thanks to the press club for having us. We're very excited. We think we've got something pretty important to share here. Obviously, we're here for one primary reason, and that's to raise awareness of some work we've been doing around autism intervention, working with kids, children with autism. As you're probably aware, or maybe you're not, 1 in 68 kids now are on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum. And when we refer to autism, we'll refer periodically throughout the presentation to ASD. That refers specifically to autism spectrum disorders, which covers a myriad of different diagnoses, but that's a general term we'll use. In 2002, Centers for Disease Control said about 1 in every 150 kids was diagnosed with autism. Today, that number is closer to 1 in 68, actually closer to 1 in 32 or 33 for boys. So obviously a growing problem. I think there are about 1.3 million kids in the country diagnosed on the spectrum today with ASD. CDC is currently reporting that it costs about $17,000 a year to educate kids on the spectrum. Moved ahead on me a little bit quickly. And in some cases, with kids with more severe cases, it's as much as $21,000 a year, so 2 to 3 times the average cost of an individual student in most states. So if you were to calculate what the savings would be by providing early interventions to these kids, a lot of times they don't get the services they need until much later in life. If you looked at just the state of Texas, you've got about $2.9 billion in savings if we could reach those kids sooner. A lot of times we get these kids into their teenage years and still haven't addressed those issues. So if we can address that sooner, we're going to save a lot of money and provide a lot of benefit to those children. Early intervention, intervention also provides a lot of benefits. Sorry, I'm working with that PowerPoint. Early intervention provides a lot of benefit and helps support educators and speech-language pathologists in a number of different ways that Dr. Rollins will talk about. She's going to reveal in her presentation the results of her research and discuss how they're changing the way we view autism therapy for the millions living with ASD. I'd like to just briefly provide
Just one spread.
I want to just jump ahead quickly and talk about how this solution works. This is Milo. You're going to meet Milo in depth in a few minutes. Essentially, Milo is delivering the instruction. Dr. Rollins and her team have developed an evidence-based curriculum that Milo delivers. So, and we'll talk about why it's more effective with Milo as we get going. But Milo delivers instruction, students have a tablet, and then the facilitator or the teacher has a tablet, and they direct instruction, choose the various lessons or modules that kids will be working with based on the skills they need, okay? And with that, I want to introduce Fred Margolin. Fred's our CEO and founder. He's going to talk a little bit about Milo and his development, and also let you listen to Milo.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate it. This has really been a long time coming, so it's very exciting to be before you today. The robot you see, 5 years ago, the technology in this robot would have cost $150,000, and now this is an affordable robot for around $5,000. We have made years of technology breakthroughs in order to give this solution in an affordable manner today. And what you see is really an incredible tool for children with autism. And as Dr. Rollins speaks, I just want to equate you with the multitasking things this robot will do. First of all, this robot is built for bonding. It has a rounder face, which is perceived as more friendly. It has anime hair that children with autism pick up especially. And the robot does things that humans cannot actually do as well. First of all, it's got a special voice. It's called in the industry Jeff, which is perceived to be extremely friendly. Second of all, as it speaks, it creates symbols, because a lot of children with autism have auditory overload. So they can hear things, but sometimes the symbols really let them focus on what the main points are and what the lessons are. Thirdly, the robot and the lessons play videos that we have been specially scripted by Dr. Rollins, and in a course of a year, there's over 1,000 videos of children doing things right and children doing things wrong. And this helps them bridge the lessons from the theoretical to see the children actually in action and how they operate. And also, Milo it creates data besides being a presenter. So Milo will perceive the eye contact of the child. A lot of times children with autism don't look at faces. And during the course of Dr. Rollins' lessons, part of it is they become friendlier and they learn better social communication. So measuring eye contact, we measure speed of answers, we measure frustration levels, and for the first time, rather than just soft answers like they seem to be doing better, we can have real data in terms of how the child is doing. So it's both an incredible communicator and also a tool to measure progress. And with that, maybe we'll let Milo say a couple of things.
I'm starting Milo from my tablet.
Hi, my name is Milo. I'm new technology from Robokind, and I am the next generation of therapy for children with autism. I am designed to help kids connect academically, socially, and behaviorally. Children with autism want to work with me because I am designed around their strengths, and I never get tired or frustrated. I help motivate kids and sessions to be monitored in real time or recorded and reviewed later by parents, teachers, or therapists. My software allows connections with tablets to deliver interactive lectures, demonstrations, and video lessons accessible to a wide range of the autism spectrum. With my technology, we can provide engaging, affordable, and effective tools for families and their therapists now and for the future. Thank you for listening. I hope you will help us change the world and truly improve the lives of children with autism.
One of the things you heard, by the way, is part of the better communication under the tutelage of Dr. Rollins. We've set the speech at 86% of normal. So the robot can actually speak at different speeds to be perceived better by the children. And this is a 86% speed. I just want to mention a couple other things the robot does. We've developed a patented software called CompuCompassion. And what the robot can do then, it measures your expressions on your face, and it makes an evaluation of whether you are agitated, frustrated, or uninterested. And we have a loop that Dr. Rollins has created where the robot can go back and stop the lesson and go back to games, go back to calm down. We have a calm down module, and really keep the engagement level going. So this is really another unique thing. The other big thing, and it's one of the big issues in autism, is a lot of children need a lot of repetition of the lessons. And the best lesson in the world, if there's not a lot of repetition, doesn't have the effect. And Milo can give these repetitions perfectly. Think about the greatest golf lesson in the world, and you only get to hit one golf ball. I mean, it's not going to have the effect. And this is one of the important things that Milo can do. He can give the same lesson, he can do it without frustration, he can do it friendly, and he can do it perfectly. It's really an important thing in autism treatment. And with that, I will just say that all the evidence is showing that Milo creates tremendous engagement, and I think we're seeing over and over, beyond engagement, Milo has become a friend of children with autism.
Thanks, Fred, and thanks to Milo. My great pleasure to introduce Dr. Pamela Rollins, 30 years in autism research and teaching and clinical practice with children with autism. She received her bachelor's degree from Boston University, got her master's at the University of Wisconsin, and then her doctorate, as previously mentioned, at the Harvard School for Education, and specializing in human development and psychology. She's been working at the Collier Center for Communication Disorders at the University of Texas at Dallas for a number of years, and has played a key role there in the development of Milo. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Pam and her team in terms of their guidance and expertise. A four-time governor-appointed member of the Texas Council for Autism and Pervasive Development Disorders. Her research supports social and pragmatic theory of language and interventions models for children with autism. Dr. Rollins has been published in more than 20 peer-reviewed journals. You can learn more about her social and pragmatic approach to language and social communication in her book, Facilitating Early Social Communication Skills from Theory to Practice. I'm also excited to share that Dr. Rollins was recently named to the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards, which establishes standards and governing credentials for professionals in healthcare and education. Please welcome Dr. Pamela Rollins.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. When I started in autism in 1982, it was considered a low prevalence disorder. In those days, I worked in mental institutions and psychiatric hospitals because that's where we would find the kids with autism. So in the last 30 years, a lot has changed in autism, and a lot has changed in autism intervention. During my talk today, I want to really make 3 main points. Robots for Autism uses evidence-based practices. These are methods of working with children with autism that have scientific evidence that they work. So evidence-based practices to unpack relevant social information to teach social skills to children with autism. We also find that children with autism are more engaged with Milo than with people, and children who are more engaged have more learning. Before I begin, excuse me. Before I begin, I'll get my talk. Before I begin, I want to tell you a little bit about autism spectrum disorders. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder that emerges before 3 years of age. People who understand autism can diagnose autism between 18 to 24 months. That's reliable. Why is it called a spectrum? It's called a spectrum because that refers to the diversity of symptoms, skills, and disability, and intellectual disability. We actually say, a lot of people will come up to me and they'll say, oh, I know about autism. I have a friend who has a child with autism. But we have a saying, when you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism. Despite this diversity in ASD, there are 2 core features that all children with autism have. The first one is the deficit in social communication and interaction that persists throughout life. They also have restricted repertoire, restricted interest, repetition of patterns of behaviors, and restricted activities. Because we're working on social skills with Milo, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the social deficit and in children with autism. Social communication moves beyond the ability to utter words and utter sentences. Many children with autism can talk. They can use words, they can label things, they can talk in sentences. The problem is a disability of sharing information verbally and non-verbally. And this happens from very, very early in life. So babies are born, and in about 2 months of age, they have a social smile. And at that time, there becomes reciprocal social interaction, back and forth social interaction with the caregiver. And children with autism have less of this, less of looking in their caregiver's eyes and at their caregiver's faces. As they move on to about 10 months of age, most children begin to point to show information. Now think about what a point is. The child, it's a major milestone. The child has to know that the adult can be looking at anything in the room that's available. But the child knows that I want you to look at what I'm looking at. And so I want to point and look back to you and say, look at this. Are you looking at what I'm looking at? So even before words, we have social information of sharing that we do about 10 months of age. And as we move on and we begin to talk, children with autism don't share information. They can request, I want to go to McDonald's, right? But they can't tell their parents what they've done in school that day, or tell them how they're feeling, especially when they're sick. The problem with reciprocity continues in conversation. They do a lot of answering. They seldom have that reciprocal social interaction in conversation. They can't take your perspective, and they have problems understanding the social situation. Despite this social deficit, they're really into objects and really into things and technology. They love technology. So on the scene comes social interaction and robots. When I reviewed the literature on social interaction and robots, or on robots with autism in general, the literature is just emerging. It's in its very, very infancy. It seems promising. There's many children with ASD seem to be responding in the literature, responding better to robots than to human. It increases their engagement and their responsiveness, improves their ability to recognize emotions, and they talk more. But what I want to point out to you is there's a lot of individual differences. And we're going to start using robots for intervention, we really need to understand those individual differences so that we can make the best interventions possible. So what I want to show you in this clip is what I mean by engaging better with robots than a human partner. The boy on the screen that I'm going to show you is Cole. He's a 14-year-old child with autism. He's minimally verbal. He's very, very compliant and very affectionate, but has few words, and his social interaction is not there.
Clap my hands. Great. You
Now
did
he's
it.
engaged right now,
I can stomp my feet.
and now he's not.
I did it too.
He's looking off to the side.
I can turn around.
Yeah, he's not paying much attention. He's compliant. He's got to do what she says, but it's not going in.
You did it too. I can shake my arms.
Oh yeah, sure, whatever you want me to do. Okay.
Good job.
Oops, sorry. Okay, so now let's watch Cole with Milo.
Let's play a game.
Okay.
Sometimes I like to play games
Conversational.
called Follow the Leader. First, I'll be the leader. I'll do something, then you do the same thing. Ready? I
Engaged.
can move my arm.
Doesn't take his eyes off of him.
You do it too.
Okay, now it's reciprocal, right?
Yeah, good job.
Great. You moved your arm. Try this one.
Good job, Cole.
I can dance. You do it too.
It's our turn.
Okay.
Good
Great.
job.
You danced.
The therapist in the videos I'm showing you is Danielle Sinego. So you see that Cole is more engaged with the robot than with people. What was really interesting for me when I saw this interaction for the first time is that the first interaction I would have thought was a really good interaction. And Cole at 14 doesn't know how to say hello, for example. I actually know Cole very well because I treated Cole in my preschool when he was 4, 5, and 6 years of age. And I did really good therapy with him. And when I came out to get him for the study, his mom said to him, Cole, say hi to Dr. Rollins. And Cole did say hi. He used the words. But if I'm standing here, he went, hi, Dr. Rollins, right? Did not look at me. Not that verbal social things. He was compliant, but he didn't look at me. But after we put him through the experimental paradigm that we were using, I said, let's run Cole through the greeting lesson. Let's see what happens. So he did. We have icons on the chest. The greeting lesson, the first greeting lesson is what is it? What's the first greeting lesson? It's look at me, smile, and say hi. Sorry about that. Look at me, smile, and say hi. So he comes out of the room after the first greeting lesson, and I'm standing there with his mom, and he looks right in my eyes, and he smiles, this big smile, and said, hi. And I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. Transfer it, bridge it to a human right away. Then what happened was his mother sent me a text later that night and said, Cole has been practicing what Milo has taught him all evening. He keeps practicing. He's looking at us, he's smiling, and he says hi. It's unbelievable. So when he came back 2 weeks later with only one lesson from Milo, this is how he greeted Danielle.
Hi, Cole. Hi.
A little slow, but he looked at her, he greeted her, and he smiled. Now, we gave him the first lesson again, and we gave him the second lesson about when to greet.
Hi, Cole.
So very different interaction even across the day. And what's really amazing about this, when I say that children are more engaged, they can learn better, he's learning from the robot things that he had not learned from people for all these years. So let me tell you a little bit, I've been talking about the greeting module, a little bit about the Robots for Autism curriculum. As I said, we use evidence-based practices to unpack relevant social information to teach social skills. My colleague Michelle McFarlane and I, when we were developing this, we decided to use social narratives, visual supports, and video modeling. We chose these practices because we know that children with autism have weak central coherence. This means that they process information in a piecemeal way. They see little pieces and they don't get the gist of what something means, especially language and social skills. And so social narratives, visual supports, and video modeling all are practices that help people get the gist of what's going on. We also use a core vocabulary, so the language that he uses is very, very specific, and it unfolds in a developmental way. And in that, we're teaching reciprocal interaction, identifying social cues, appropriate social responsiveness, perspective taking, understanding facial expressions. Many of the things that we talked about earlier that are the problems with social skills with children with autism. So just to show you the kinds of things that we have been working on most recently, we have, this doesn't work. We have the introductory module, this way. We have the introductory module that has introductory lessons that help us and games that all children can play with, all children on the spectrum, but it's also a pre-assessment to make sure that the children have the developmental skills to work with Milo. A calm down module, teaching them how to calm down, how to regulate themselves emotionally, because if they're distressed, they're not going to learn. Teaching about emotions, we have many modules about teaching, conversation, the one I talked about, greeting, leave taking, and then what happens, the dynamics of a conversation. And then we have many situational modules. How do you negotiate a play date? What happens when there's a problem on a play date? What's it like to be a guest or host? Notice the words guest and host are helping the child with perspective taking on what role they're taking in a certain situation. So armed with this amazing curriculum, I thought it was mostly amazing. I still had questions because I'm always self-guessing myself. I said, did we do it right? And the kids have individual differences. And so have I gotten to the most fine-tuned way of looking at the kids as I could to make sure that it's the best program as possible. And I'm going to continue to do research to keep making this a better and better program. And so I wanted to address the individual differences in performance. So my question was, what are specific features of the robot-child interaction that facilitate social understanding in children with ASD?